Imagine a quiet town suddenly gripped by terror, a place where every familiar face and friendly smile is forever marred by the memory of one brutal, irreversible act. Picture a moment when hope was almost tangible, a moment when a woman, having just been released from jail after a grueling legal battle, dared to dream of a fresh start. She was ready to reunite with her children and rebuild the life she had fought so hard for. But that hope was entangled in a dark, toxic relationship that would soon lead to unspeakable tragedy. Today I promise you a deep dive into a case that exposes how unaddressed pain, unchecked anger, and a cycle of abuse can culminate in a disaster that shatters an entire community. In the next few moments, I will take you on a journey through the harrowing events that led to the fateful night when Roosevelt Davis III, a man once full of promise who was intimately involved in a troubled relationship with 31-year-old Kadesha Burch, robbed a bank in Wisconsin, drove to Kentucky, and took her life while also wounding her mother. Welcome to True Crime Intel. I'm Williams. If you're passionate about true crime and want to join a community dedicated to uncovering hidden stories and exploring the dark corners of human nature, please hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with us as we drop more gripping true crime stories every day.
Police say Roosevelt Davis III robbed a bank in Wisconsin and then traveled to Kentucky, where he shot and killed Kadesha Burch, also shooting and wounding her mother.
In the quiet town of Springfield, Kentucky, life had always moved at a gentle pace. Neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles, and families gathered around dinner tables sharing stories of ordinary days. Yet beneath this calm exterior, dark currents were building, currents that would soon erupt into tragedy. It began with murmurs of tension surrounding a man who had once been full of promise. Roosevelt Davis III, once a star athlete in high school, was now a troubled soul whose life had spiraled into anger and despair. Over time, his bright potential was eclipsed by bitterness, personal failures, and a growing inner darkness that none of his friends or family could have fully comprehended. Kadesha Burch, popularly known as DayDay, was a 31-year-old mother of two whose gentle spirit lit up every room she entered. In Springfield, she was known for her kind heart, her infectious laughter, and the selfless way she cared for her children. Every day, despite the challenges that life threw her way, she rose with determination and hope. Her smile was a promise of a better tomorrow, a tomorrow where her children would grow up in a home filled with love and security. In the weeks leading up to the tragedy, she even took to social media to express heartfelt gratitude for the support that had helped her endure the hardships of months spent entangled in a bitter legal battle. In that message, she spoke of the long-awaited prospect of reuniting with her children, a promise of new beginnings that made her radiate hope. But behind the warmth of her smile and the optimism in her words, a shadow loomed. Behind that seemingly hopeful message lay a story of escalating violence and despair, a story that would soon consume both her and the community she loved. For Roosevelt Davis, the journey from promise to peril was gradual yet inexorable. His early life was marked by potential and accolades, but as he grew older, the pressures of life, compounded by a growing reliance on drugs and untreated mental health issues, eroded the person he once was. Friends noticed subtle changes, a flicker of anger here, bouts of erratic behavior there. Yet in the midst of his internal struggle, no one could have foreseen that this troubled young man would one day unleash his pent-up fury in a calculated, premeditated act of violence. What had begun as a passionate relationship between Kadesha and Roosevelt quickly devolved into a cycle of abuse and fear. In the early days, their love was intense and all-consuming. They were inseparable, united by emotions that burned brighter than the stars. But as time passed, that initial spark faded, replaced by an ever-darkening cycle of anger, resentment, and violence. Neighbors started to notice the changes. Whispers spread through the town about raised voices echoing from behind closed doors, and the strained looks exchanged between the couple. The once promising union now bore the hallmarks of a toxic relationship, one where the balance of love had been skewed into a dangerous pattern of abuse. In October 2024, the situation reached a breaking point. During a particularly violent confrontation at their home, Kadesha found herself forced into a desperate act of self-defense. In that moment of sheer terror, With no other recourse to protect her life from the relentless assault, she fired a shot at Roosevelt. It was not an act of vengeance or hatred. It was a plea for survival, a last-ditch effort to reclaim her safety. The immediate consequence was severe. She was arrested, and the legal system, unsympathetic to the desperation behind her actions, separated her from her children and her community. The courtroom drama that followed was long and painful, and while many sympathized with her plight, the marks of that day would forever alter the trajectory of her life. Despite the heavy burdens placed upon her, Kadesha clung to hope. Even while confined by the cold, indifferent walls of jail and a justice system that seemed blind to her suffering, she continued to dream of a better future, a future where she would once again embrace her children and build a life free from abuse. Just days before Christmas 2024, she reached out to the world with a message that radiated fragile optimism. In that message, she expressed heartfelt gratitude for the support of her community and the possibility of reuniting with her children. A promise of renewal that seemed to signal the dawn of a new beginning. Yet, hidden in the shadows of that promise was a darkness that would soon claim everything. While Kadesha dared to believe in the light, Roosevelt's inner demons had grown too powerful to ignore. His transformation from a hopeful young man into a figure consumed by rage was complete. Friends recalled how his once bright eyes had turned cold and dangerous, as if his soul were locked in a perpetual battle with demons, long forgotten by the outside world. The anger, the bitterness, and the overwhelming desire for revenge coalesced into a single and destructive purpose. On the morning of December 27, 2024, that purpose took form in the most devastating way imaginable. With a heart burning with a vengeful fire, Roosevelt Davis set his plan into motion. Earlier that day, he had committed a bank robbery in Wisconsin, using the stolen money to purchase 2 guns and camouflage gear. Every step he took from that moment on was calculated, a journey of no return that would lead him straight to the home of Kadesha Burch. His drive from Wisconsin to Kentucky was marked by an eerie silence, as if the very air was heavy with the weight of impending doom. Every mile he traveled brought him closer to a fate he had chosen for himself, a fate that would forever change the lives of those around him. When Roosevelt finally arrived at the modest home on Claybrook Avenue, there was no turning back. The house, once a sanctuary of love and safety, was about to become the stage for a horror that would etch itself into the collective memory of Springfield. With a forceful kick, he broke down the door, and in an instant, the tranquility of the early morning was shattered by the deafening sound of gunfire. Bullets were fired with cold, calculated precision, a barrage of destruction that claimed the life of Kadesha in a single, tragic moment. In that heartbeat, a life filled with dreams and the promise of a brighter future was extinguished, replaced by an overwhelming void of grief and despair. Inside the house, Kadesha and her mother, Frances Campbell, were caught completely unprepared for the onslaught. Frances, a strong and resilient woman who had been a rock in Kadesha's life, was also struck by the merciless assault. Although she survived, the physical wounds were only a fraction of the lasting damage. The emotional scars, the terror, the shock, and the unending sorrow would remain with her and the entire community for years to come. The once warm home now lay in ruin, its familiar rooms transformed into a chaotic tableau of destruction and bloodshed. In the immediate aftermath of that fateful morning, as police cars illuminated the darkened streets and investigators began to reconstruct the sequence of events, the full horror of the crime became painfully clear. Every piece of evidence pointed to a meticulously planned act of violence. Witnesses described a man whose eyes burned with a cold intensity, a man whose every move was driven by a deep-seated anger and an insatiable need for retribution. Roosevelt's confession, along with the physical evidence gathered at the scene, confirmed what many had feared. This was not a crime of passion, but a calculated act of murder, a final, irrevocable step taken by a man who had lost all sense of redemption. As investigators delved deeper, the timeline of events emerged as a patchwork of moments both small and significant. They uncovered seemingly inconsequential interactions, a curt word exchanged in passing, a tense glance across a room, that, in hindsight, were the building blocks of an impending tragedy. Neighbors recalled instances when they had seen Roosevelt lingering near the house or heard raised voices that hinted at a growing storm of abuse behind closed doors. These small, almost imperceptible moments had all led to that fateful day. Yet in the whirlwind of daily life, no one had grasped the full extent of the danger until it was far too late. For the community of Springfield, the tragedy of Kadesha Burch was not merely an isolated event. It was a collective wound that cut deep into the heart of a town that had always prided itself on its unity and compassion. Candlelight vigils were organized, drawing hundreds of mourners who came together to remember a woman whose life had been a beacon of hope for so many. At these gatherings, tearful voices recounted stories of Kadesha's kindness, her unwavering strength, and the gentle way she cared for everyone around her. Friends recalled how she would always lend a helping hand and how her laughter could brighten even the darkest day. Now those cherished memories were a painful reminder of what had been lost, a light extinguished far too soon.
People in Washington County gathered tonight to honor a woman who was shot and killed inside her home last week.
People we spoke to tonight described Kadesha, or DayDay as she was called by those close to her, as a light and someone who was a friend to everyone. They say she was the embodiment of what the Springfield community is really about.
This family is intermingled into my personal family.
Kadesha Burch was known by many in Springfield, and that was clear Sunday night when people from all over came together for a vigil in her memory. Among them was Pastor Gene Livers.
We remember when DayDay was a baby. I've eaten at the grandmother's table and the grandfather's. We got a long history together.
He described DayDay as a joyful person, as someone who was a light for others.
That she would help you and nobody would have to know. And so to be such a young person in her 30s, that's unusual, you know, because today we want to blow our own horn.
DayDay's light, she was a very, very, very happy person. You know, when you talked to her, she didn't see a stranger. Regardless of what color you were, she was your friend.
Mayor Essex says an entire community is grieving now, a community that hopes this never happens again.
As law enforcement delved deeper into the case, multiple perspectives emerged, each adding a layer of complexity to the unfolding narrative. Detectives and forensic experts provided clinical, almost dispassionate accounts of the evidence, a series of facts that, when pieced together, painted a picture of a man consumed by his inner demons. One detective explained that while the brutality of the crime was shocking on its own, the true horror lay in the methodical nature of Roosevelt's actions. Every decision he made that day had been premeditated, every step planned with the precision of someone who had long abandoned any hope of redemption. His transformation, from a promising youth to a man capable of such deliberate cruelty, stood as a stark warning about the dangers of untreated anger and mental instability. At the same time, family members and community activists offered deeply personal accounts of the loss. They spoke of Kadesha not merely as a victim, but as a fighter. A woman who, despite enduring the horrors of domestic abuse, never lost sight of her dreams for a better life. Her arrest, the pain of separation from her children, and the bitter years that followed were all part of a struggle she bore with quiet dignity. In their recollections, she was a mother whose love knew no bounds, a friend who was always there in times of need, and a soul whose light brightened the lives of everyone she encountered. These heartfelt testimonials served as a powerful counterpoint to the cold facts of the investigation, reminding us that behind every headline is a human being with hopes, dreams, and an unyielding will to live. In the weeks that followed, the horrific events of December 27, 2024, the impact of Kadesha's death continued to reverberate throughout Springfield. The legal proceedings against Roosevelt Davis became a focal point of public attention. Courtrooms filled with mourners and advocates, and every testimony, every piece of evidence presented was met with a mixture of sorrow and righteous anger. The trial was not just about seeking justice for one life lost. It was about confronting a broader societal failure, a failure to recognize the warning signs of abuse and provide the support that might have prevented such a tragedy. During the trial, a montage of testimonies and forensic evidence revealed a chilling timeline of events. Witnesses described the bank robbery in Wisconsin with a sense of disbelief, unable to comprehend that such a calculated act of violence could be committed by someone once seen as full of potential. Surveillance footage captured Roosevelt's unnerving composure during the robbery, a calm, unnerving presence that belied the storm of emotions raging inside him. Every detail reinforced the conclusion that that dreadful day was the culmination of a long period of escalating tension, a tension allowed to fester until it finally exploded in the most devastating way. The courtroom became a battleground not only for justice, but for the collective grief of a community that refused to let the memory of Kadesha fade away. Family members and community activists took turns speaking, their voices filled with sorrow, anger, and an urgent plea for reform. They called for increased funding for domestic violence prevention programs, better training for law enforcement to recognize the signs of abuse, and a societal shift in how victims are treated. Their impassioned pleas resonated far beyond the walls of the courtroom, sparking discussions in community centers, schools, and local government offices about how best to prevent another tragedy like this one. As the trial wound down and a verdict was finally reached, the scars of that December morning remained, a painful reminder that no legal sentence could ever restore what had been lost. The conviction of Roosevelt Davis, though a necessary step toward justice, did little to ease the overwhelming sorrow that gripped those who had loved Kadesha. For many in Springfield, the loss was measured not in the cold logic of a courtroom, but in the silent memories of a mother's laughter, a friend's kindness, and a community forever altered by violence. In the aftermath, efforts to heal and rebuild became intertwined with a renewed dialogue about domestic violence and mental health. Local schools initiated programs to educate young people about healthy relationships and the importance of seeking help when needed. Community centers hosted regular workshops and support group meetings, creating safe spaces where those who had suffered could share their stories and begin to heal. Through these initiatives, Kadesha's memory lived on, not only as a symbol of loss, but as a catalyst for positive change. Her story became a rallying cry for ensuring that every cry for help is heard and that early intervention can prevent future tragedies. Even now, as Springfield continues to grapple with the aftermath of that fateful December day, questions remain that haunt every conversation. How could a man of such potential descend into darkness so profound? Were there missed opportunities for intervention? Moments when a kind word, a simple act of compassion, might have changed the course of events? And most poignantly, how many other cries for help go unnoticed amid the noise of everyday life? These unanswered questions serve as a call to action for every one of us, to be vigilant, to listen, and to act before silence becomes the final note in someone's life. The story of Roosevelt Davis and Kadesha Burch is a tragic reminder that domestic violence and mental health crises are not isolated incidents. They are pervasive issues demanding our attention and compassion. This case forces us to look beyond the headlines and statistics, to see the human faces behind them, the faces of mothers, fathers, children, and entire communities forever altered by violence. It reminds us that every act of neglect, every failure to intervene, has consequences that echo far beyond the immediate moment. Now, I ask you to take a moment and reflect on the small signs, a whispered word of distress, a fleeting look of despair, that might be the only signal someone in your community is sending. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, can make a difference in preventing another life from being cut tragically short. If you believe in the power of community, in the necessity of early intervention, and in the strength of compassion, please like this video, subscribe to True Crime Intel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice might be the one that sparks the change needed to save a life. In the end, the legacy of Kadesha Burch lives on in every effort to support domestic violence prevention, every initiative to bolster mental health services, and every conversation that dares to address these critical issues head-on. Her life, marked by both pain and immense strength, serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Even in the face of overwhelming adversity, there remains the potential to inspire hope and drive change. Thank you for joining me as we uncovered this complex, heartbreaking case. Every word shared here is a call to action, a plea for awareness, and a commitment to ensuring that no other life is lost to the darkness of unaddressed abuse and despair. Let the memory of Kadesha Burch guide us as we strive to be better neighbors, friends, and members of a community that values every life. If this story has stirred something within you, a desire to act, to help, or simply to understand, please share it with others. Every like, every share, and every comment amplifies the message of hope and prevention. Together, we can shine a light on the darkness that too often hides behind closed doors, and we can honor the memory of those we have lost by ensuring that their stories lead to lasting change. I'm Williams with True Crime Intel, urging you to carry these lessons in your heart. Reach out to those in need. Speak up when you notice a friend or neighbor in distress, and work towards a future where domestic violence is not tolerated, and every individual is given the support they deserve. Let the tragic events of December 27, 2024, serve as a somber reminder that change is possible only when we look beyond our own lives and fight for the safety and well-being of all. As you reflect on this narrative, remember that the journey to healing begins with awareness, empathy, and action. Each small act of kindness can ripple outward, creating a network of support strong enough to prevent future tragedies. The memory of Kadesha Burch is a testament to the enduring power of hope, a hope that, despite the darkness, can guide us toward a better, more compassionate future. Thank you for being here, for watching, and for taking the time to engage with a story that is as heartbreaking as it is important. Please like this video, subscribe to True Crime Intel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice, your support, and your willingness to help spread awareness can truly make all the difference. Let us honor the memory of Kadesha Burch by working together to build communities where every life is valued and every cry for help is met with compassion. I'm Williams with True Crime Intel, signing off for now. Stay safe, be kind, and always look out for one another. Let this story remind us that while darkness may sometimes seem overwhelming, the light of collective empathy and action can and must prevail. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.